These are the instructions for making a face mask that is not medically approved to keep out the virus, but it will protect you from somebody else's heavy cough or sneeze. The fabric that you need is 15 inches long and 8 inches deep, with 2 smaller pieces to make the end, and they measure 5 inches by 1 3/4 inches across the top. The first step is to fold the big piece of fabric in half and sew a seam along the 8-inch edge. Match up your edges right sides together and seam down. Using a 1/4 inch seam will be ample. You can either, I won't press it open, I find it easier to just set the seam by pressing it, open it up like that, put the iron down here and pull the top and just press the seam all to one side. When the seam is pressed, turn the tube so the right side is out. You've now made a tube. Press it again with the seam that you've made closest towards you, and just press the seam. And you can take out any other creases you've made. The next stage is to use your pins to make 3 pleats in your mask. The first pleat is about 1.5 inches from the bottom. It's a small pleat. I just gather the material and fold it over like that. Hold it, pin it slightly away from the edges. And make sure it's even on the other side, and pin the other side, again, slightly away from the edges. Flatten your material out. There's a little crease there, I'll just get rid of that. Make your second pleat about 1 inch above your first pleat. Again, not very big. And pleat it slightly away from the edge, because you're going to machine down here and you don't want the pins to interfere with it. Again, make sure that the pin, both sides are even in size and distance. And now another 1 inch above, and make your third pleat. There. And pin it. Now just check that this is a little bit wider than that bit, but I'm not that bothered. You can be fussier if you want to. Just make sure that these are the same length, and then you know it'll fit. I can adjust this a bit to make it a bit straighter. That's better. And then it will be it'll be more even. The next thing is to take one of your small pieces of fabric, these pieces, fold over one end, just maybe 1/4 inch or so, maybe. Measure it against the length of your mask, fold in the other end so that the binding is going to be the same length when the ends are folded in as the mask itself. Then fold this binding piece in half lengthwise, press it, and I'm going to make the other one up at the same time. Press it a little bit more so it stays. Turn this round, make the other one up. Turn the top end in a little bit. Measure it against the length of the mask, fold the bottom end in, press it. And fold in half. Now you're going to attach these binding pieces to the mask with a 6.5 inch piece of elastic. So you're going to put the raw end of the binding against the raw end of the mask like this. And if you cut it accurately, which this isn't quite accurate, I'll just fold this in a tiny bit more. Raw edges to raw edges, from there, from the top to the bottom. And you're going to insert the elastic between the two at the top edge to start off with. Put the binding in place. Put the binding, the elastic and the mask under the machine and sew a 1/4 inch from the edge of the binding. Be careful not to go all the way down to the bottom. Go to the bottom pleat and then take your piece of elastic, make sure that you haven't twisted it, and insert the other end of the elastic between the binding and the mask and complete your seam. And cut. Same for the other side. Binding raw edge to raw edge. Insert the elastic in the top between the binding and the mask. Take a 1/4 inch seam. Bottom of the elastic between the binding and the mask and finish the seam off. I now take the pins out on both sides. And now I'm going to fold the binding to the other side of the mask with the elastic. I'm just going to trim off all of the loose ends so that I don't get them caught up. And there's a set here on the other end. And the way to do that, there's the binding with the elastic. You're going to fold the binding over and take the elastic with you and fold it until the elastic is sticking out parallel to the, in line with the mask. So I've just folded the binding to the wrong side. And I am going to sew this on the wrong side. The choice is yours. Again, 1/4 inch seam all the way down to the end. And take it out. And that's one side of your mask completely finished. And now the other side. Fold it in the same way. Take off the extra tiny snips of cotton that I didn't do earlier. The elastic is now facing out, as you can see. folding the binding in and 1/4 of an inch seam. And there you have one finished mask with 3 pleats, and it looks like this.